Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I am here with Andrew and Steven of Chasing Labels, one of my favorite boutique label podcasts. Andrew, Steven, how we doing tonight?
Lovely.
Feeling good.
Just lovely. We're a fan of your show, and I'm glad we're finally able to talk with you and get on here.
It's only been since my watch says 9 years we've been trying to get in contact with each other, and it's nice we could do it.
That's we're busy people. We both have kids. I mean, at least me and you. I know Andrew doesn't have any kids.
I have all the time in the world.
Yeah. So it's kind of my fault. It's my fault. I had a kid, and this only happened in the last year. So the other 8 years, I don't know what happened, but yeah.
I love how on the same page we all are, because I was about to ask Andrew if we were just going to blame all of this on Steven, but I guess, you're already under the bus, so just stay there.
That's what I do. It's what I do, because he runs everything. He's the producer behind everything. So, like, if anything bad happens, it's all on him. It's all on him.
Well, Andrew, you got a raw deal then, because in the contract it should say that the producer can't have kids. Like that's obvious.
I have to be flexible.
I know kid clause. I guess.
Well, we don't need to hear about the making kids process. Thanks, Steven.
You don't have to be flexible to do that. There's other ways. If you've seen Don't Breathe, there's other ways.
Oh, okay.
That's a reference.
I'm not saying that's how I did it. I'm not saying that's how I did it. I'm just saying there's other ways.
So first of all, Chasing Labels, for those that have never listened, what is Chasing Labels?
Should I do this or Andrew?
Oh yeah, please.
Well, okay. So me and Andrew, we've been podcasting together for what, about 4 or 5 years now?
It's about 4 years, yeah, since 2018.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we started out doing a show called the Cinema Discovery Project, which all that stuff's still available. You can still get it on our feed. But we met through a friend, Dan Skip Allen, who we've had on as a guest before. He's a critic, film critic, and we did shows with him called the Top 5 Weekly, where we talked about a lot of random conversations about and doing top 5 lists and things for different subjects. And through that, me and Andrew became really good friends, had a lot of the same similar tastes, and so we started a show called the Cinema Discovery Project, where it was a very broad thing where we kind of talked about whatever we wanted to talk about. It went through different iterations. So we got to a point where we started talking about like one movie each week. I got kind of bored of that. And I was in a transition of moving into this house. And I told Andrew, I was like, you know what, let's do something new. We both love collecting. That's all we do when we're not doing the show, was talk about what Blu-rays we were getting. And I was like, so why aren't we just doing a show talking about this stuff? We spend all our time doing it, talking about it. Let's just do that. Talk about the new announcements, get people pumped for them. And and that's the simple story of it. We just finally made clear what we needed to do a podcast about, which is things that we already talked about. And
and Cinema Discovery Project, we did like how
72,
70 something episodes, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think one of our last episodes. Oh my goodness, what was one of the last episodes
we talked about Ugetsu.
Ugetsu, I think, was the last episode we did, because we were at that point we were doing one movie a week and kind of breaking it down like beat by beat and just talking about the context and all the stuff behind it. And each week we would pick a different movie. We wouldn't tell each other what the movie was.
We had to watch it.
Well, we wouldn't tell each other like until we made the announcement.
Sure. Yeah. Each week we would surprise each other with the new movie.
surprise each other with that. But then Steven came up with the idea of like talking about Blu-ray releases, talking about collecting habits. I
didn't come up with the idea. Don't give me that credit.
You pitched it like, should we talk about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I was like, we kind of already do it anyways. Both of us had, been collecting for years. So it was part of our lives very inherently. And we decided that, we should just start doing it. And I didn't realize at the time how popular that subject is. How there is a lot of people who collect, and a lot of people want to hear about other people collecting, and a lot of people want to talk about collecting and all this kind of stuff. It was much more. There was a much bigger community than people just wanting to talk about movies in general. So that's kind of how it started, and we started that. Like, what was it, like April of 2020, March of 2020, somewhere around there, right, like after the thing shut down, pandemic started. Luckily
perfect time.
enough, Lucky enough, Steve and I are distant anyway, so everything was done,
Well,
digitally and remotely. So
well, and the thing is, for me though, I mean, like my lifestyle didn't really change in the sense of like I didn't stay at home. I had to keep working. I work for Pepsi, so nobody stopped going to the grocery stores. So I kept working through the whole thing, and thank God I haven't gotten sick that I'm aware of.
right, and yeah, it's
So
of all the things that stayed open were grocery stores and the hospitals, pretty much, and police, fire, and all that kind of stuff too. So, then we kind of launched through there, and then we're in our second
this
calendar
is almost
year?
our second full year. This coming, yeah. So we're going into our third year when we get to
Wow.
March. Yeah.
Nice. Yes. Can't believe it's been that much.
Steven works for Pepsi. Andrew, does this pay all of your bills?
No. I don't see a dime from any of this. I do this all for the love of the game, love of the movies. I mean, I'm gonna talk about these releases anyway. I might as well talk about them with other people.
Right.
I might as well just get it out there and just do it anyways, because for the longest time there's not a lot of people you talk about, and along the way, as everybody knows, life changes, people grow apart, people change, friendships evolve and whatnot, and then the people you used to hang out and buy movies and talk movies with, you just grow distant over time or whatever changes, so you don't really have that camaraderie anymore, so you got to branch out. And I guess the internet and the social media world, while its reputation is terrible, sometimes you do find a few diamonds in the rough. So yeah,
I guess we're diamonds, Ryan.
You are diamonds to me, at least. Yeah, that question at the beginning was mostly in jest, because obviously we all, the three of us at least, know this can't pay any bills in any foreseeable future. I have people still that ask me like, wait, are you like on the verge of being able to make this full time yet? And it's, some people really don't understand how much this just plain doesn't pay.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I've got that same question where like, do you get paid for podcasting? And I'm like, no. To be honest, no. A lot of the stuff, I mean, a lot of the people who do make this a full-time thing, they have massive followers. We're talking like, millions of people maybe listen, hundreds of thousands. You get big, you have to get big, supporters.
They have sponsors on their shows, and
you gotta have like backing from something somewhere giving you money to do it. Other than that, it's kind of like how YouTube is. If you're not big, especially now, you don't really get paid anymore. It's not even like the YouTube partner thing was a thing where people were making ad revenue. Now it's not the way it used to be and all that stuff. And podcasting world is kind of going the way of YouTube, where there's so many people doing it. So you really got to find your foothold in an audience somewhere. And if you don't, you're just kind of talking to the wind.
And most of the time, it seems like the names that are able to make money are names that you already know, basically. And sadly, Steven and Andrew and myself are not celebrities, so we are not making any money from this, and likely never will.
Well, we can do it, man. We're on our way there. We're on our way there. Let's just give it another 20 years.
Another 20 years. That's
another
a good
20
point.
years.
Yeah.
Just a small amount of time.
I do want to bring up something that you just referenced, because this whole community is sort of like self-referential. It seems like there are a lot of people that are into films, therefore get into physical media, and some of them therefore get into podcasting or YouTubing, or some of them therefore get into starting a label, or some of them therefore get into making movies. There's all kinds of different ways that this hobby begets other people in this hobby. So what was your general path, Andrew? What did you start by wanting to make a podcast? Obviously not. So how did you get into film?
No, I mean, it's very fortuitous that I met Steven, who has a lot of he's a very motivated individual to get me to do this. I don't think I would have ever started it by myself had he not started it. Just because, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of motivation, a lot of know-how, really. Like the technical aspect of it is always, I think, the most difficult part. The recording, the editing, keeping up with all that's always the toughest. For me, I actually had started a YouTube channel myself in 2016 called Cabzilla Productions, and it was about doing movie reviews like everybody else was doing on YouTube, still does, going to the movies every week, reviewing the newest stuff coming out. sometimes review. I started off reviewing TV, and I realized no one cared about that. So I switched to movies, and I did that from 2016 through 2019, and I ended. I think the last review I ever did was 1917, the Sam Mendes film.
Nice.
And I ended in like January of 2020, not knowing that everything would pretty much shut down 3 months later. So no, there would be no movies for a while after that anyway.
Right.
But I did that like every week. I'd go, you know, Thursday nights or Friday nights, to watch a new movie, and then I'd come home, shoot a review maybe that night or several days, edit it, and then I did that for a long time. I think I did like over a couple of hundred of those over time, I think. And then I switched, and then I decided I just wanted to concentrate on doing reviews of, like Blu-rays, box sets, stuff like that. And then I did that on Cabzilla Productions for up until we changed it to Chasing Labels YouTube page recently. So I did that for about a year, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And and then when we switched over to making it Chasing Labels, just continue that trend onward. And then that was kind of the whole thing. It took me a long time to kind of get up the motivation, get up the courage to go on camera, because it's not an easy thing, especially if you're someone who has a lot of anxiety, who
Sure.
doesn't have a lot of a positive self-esteem, where seeing yourself on screen, hearing yourself is an obstacle to overcome in and of itself. I don't know how people could still do it so easily on YouTube, but they feel so natural about it. That's something I don't think I'll ever get used to. No matter how many times I do this, still extremely nervous before and during a show, no matter what.
It's almost worse when you have to do videos by yourself, because you only hear yourself. When you're, it can be nerve-wracking talking to a bunch of people that you don't know, but they're at least you're not alone just hearing your own self. And that's always been hard for me. I've tried YouTube in the past and never could really get myself motivated as well, because just sitting in a room with the camera looking at you with no feedback is not really my style. Like everything I've done when it comes to like things is usually doing it with other people or with an audience. And so, I mean, it's tough, man. I understand. I mean, the YouTube channel hasn't really been something we've been able to focus on a lot. We want to, but I understand not being able to get really motivated, because it's a lot of work to put into that on top of what we already do every week,
Right.
where you're trying to watch things to be able to have good context for the audience.
And I think both fortunate for us is the podcast really has taken, has become, and it's not gigantic or anything like that. I'm not going to overblow it, but it is.
You don't know the stats. I know the stats.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know the stats. I mean, for all I know, there could be 1 million views every episode. Who knows?
You'll never know.
I'll never know. But
That's in the next segment. I'm getting him to share the screen in just a moment, by the way.
Thank you. Maybe I'll finally figure it out. But it's becoming not a full-time thing, but you've got to keep up with the news of just what's going on. There's movie announcements that happen every single week now. A lot of them hit you all at once. A lot of them seem to hit on later on in the week, right before you're about to actually record an episode. So you got to get all frantic, get all the details in your head. And then there's all kind of logistics and stuff like that. So you got to keep up with all of that. And you want to watch these movies to be relatively informed of what you're saying, or else you're just listing off a bunch of random movies that you have no context of, and you're not giving your audience any worthwhile information at all. You're just kind of telling them what they can already look up on an announcement sheet on Blu-ray.com anyway.
Of course.
So there's a lot that goes into it. But for me, over time, things have evolved from me doing things by myself to doing things with Steven. And then, of course, with Chasing Labels now. But I've been a big fan of just the kind of the YouTube movie collector scene, or just looking up people talking about movies and whatnot since like the late 2000s, when YouTube was in its relevant infancy. So it took me a long time to kind of get up the motivation to do it myself. But I know that Steven has his kind of YouTube origins as well.
Oh, you don't want to hear about that.
Oh, well, that's how I kind of met him. So yeah.
Nah, it's okay. No, okay. So there was a time. Actually, I'm not even going to try to think of when it happened, what year, but some years before I met Andrew, funny enough, there's a group on Facebook called Film Club. It's just a huge group called Film Club. It's got like thousands of members in it. And the person that started that group lives in my area. And so we realized we live near each other. And so we hooked up, and I said, this was, I was wanting to start a YouTube channel, and I was like, okay, there's a lot of people in this group. Realistically, not everybody, is like participating in this group all the time, but there's a good amount of people in here. And so I was like, I talked with this guy. His name's Carl Champion Jr., by the way. And so I was like, hey, you want to start a weekly show where we talk about, new releases and kind of do like the round table kind of thing where we talk movies and talk about different topics. And so, yeah, we did it. And my friend who has a recording studio that I did a lot of music stuff for, shooting music videos and things, allowed us to use his studio as a base, so we kind of did a Wayne's World thing. We set up a desk. We had, I was one of the hosts. And then we had usually 2 or 3 other people at the desk, and we had a 3-camera setup. And then we did the whole thing. We did a whole, show where we just talked about a lot of different film things. And then along with that, we started to want to flex our filmmaking things. So we turned the crew and the people in the show into kind of like characters like The Office, where it was all comedy stuff and it was all influenced by film. So there was one episode where we kind of made fun of Tarantino things. There was one where we did like a Christmas special, and one of our guys was playing Ash from Evil Dead, and he was kind of like the ghost of Christmas Ash was the name of that episode. And he's kind of playing the ghost that's like it's a whole thing. But we did a lot of things that were like inspired by films we loved, and we did little sketches that were all guerrilla style filmmaking. And I would say here's where you can go watch it. But we actually recently got taken down off YouTube. Probably about 6 months ago, I realized eventually that our whole channel got taken down because there was a few videos that they deemed inappropriate. So they just took down the whole thing. But I have everything, and I'm thinking I'm going to re-upload it all. So
weird.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's super interesting. I'm curious. What are some of the things that originally got you guys into film itself, not just speaking on it? Because as we stated, a lot of this is self-referential, and not every hobby has that. Like sports, obviously, you could be a big fan of like the Kansas City Chiefs and then go listen to people talk about the Chiefs every day for your life. The whole Blu-ray side is kind of like that already, but to get into that, you have to like film to begin with. So maybe some of the formidable films in your lives there.
I would say for me, some of the things that come to mind are some of the early Disney or early Pixar things like Toy Story. Toy Story was definitely one that, I had the hard shell cases. My parents would get me the awesome big hard shell cases. I think I still have a few of them because I just couldn't let them go. My parents tried to give them away in yard sales, and I said, "What the hell is this? Why is this in here?" And I'd just take them back and put them in my car or something. And I would say Toy Story is one of them. Jurassic Park's definitely another one.
My favorites.
Yeah, one of the best ones. And then maybe something I would say when it came to filmmaking, where filmmaking started to really come into my mind, is The Matrix. The Matrix was one where I looked at the movie and I was like, how did they do that? I mean, of course, Jurassic Park is another one where like the effects are amazing and they still look great. But I was still a little young then. But when The Matrix came out, I was like, dude, this is awesome. And I want to know how they did it. Right. So them 3 are 3 films that I look back on fondly and still love them. And still, just are ones I can't wait to show my daughter because they're just, they to me, they show, all 3 of them films show different sides of film that are all wonderment and just great examples of just good storytelling and good effects and good, just everything we love about kind of the larger scope of cinema. So
it's a good call.
Yeah. Andrew, are you lost?
I know I'm here. No, I mean, I was just waxing poetically about your origins. But for me, a lot of it is, I think, not ununique to a lot of people's love of movies. All started with at a very young age of watching movies not only at home via VHS, depending on how old you are. Sometimes you meet people who don't know what a VHS is, but it started off with VHS when I was a little kid. Things like, the Disney clamshell cases that Steve were just talking about, but I was watching like Cinderella, Little Mermaid, Jungle Book, Rescuers Down Under, a lot of that early, the early Golden Age stuff, and then the pre-Golden Age Disney stuff a lot when I was a kid. But then also a lot of live action. I don't know what it was with a lot of people growing up in our era. We got introduced to a lot of live action stuff very early on.
Yeah.
Like I remember still have it somewhere, the VHS of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Kevin Costner himself. I remember watching that at like 3-4 years old. A lot of other formative stuff I watched where I had the VHSs of Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. I had the VHSs of all the Indiana Jones movies, the VHSs of all the Star Wars films. I had the VHS, of course, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of my favorite. I've watched that first film incessantly throughout my life and had all the VHS tapes. I think I saw the third film in the theater like 3 times when I was a kid. I think I saw like Lion King 3 times when I was a kid in the theater. And then there were of course the live action movies of the 90s, Independence Day, Armageddon, Men in Black. I saw one of my earliest remembrances is seeing Batman Returns in the theater. And we arrived late and the movie had already started to the point where the clowns were attacking Gotham City, and we walked in the middle of that scene, and then I saw what else did I see? Mortal Kombat.
You don't have to say your whole history, man.
Oh, I'm saying it all.
No,
I'm getting interviewed. I might as well say it all. But I'm just saying there was a lot of combination of watching at home, watching in the theater, being taken to the theater every week by, a parent, a dad or an uncle, and being taken to Blockbuster for renting movies by a dad or an uncle, a lot of things like that. And that's kind of where the origin of my love of movies started. And I had a big VHS collection as a kid. I was one of the fortunate ones that I guess my parents were able to afford that.
Nice. The mention of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that is unabashedly one of my most famous people will say guilty pleasures, but I don't believe there's any such thing as a guilty pleasure. I adore that damn movie. And when they announced that coming from Arrow this year in 4K, I legitimately almost shed a tear. It is such a coming around full circle moment for me. And the moment I get that in hand, I am watching the hell out of that entire disc front to back. I cannot wait. Thanks
I'm just gonna enjoy my snapper case version of it.
Oh goodness, snapper case. We haven't gotten to the collecting part of our lives yet, but snapper cases, man. Talk about early DVDs.
I lied. I'm gonna buy the Arrow version and just put it all in my snapper case.
Oh,
nice.
Is that a disc?
Shove up the poster and shove it inside.
Yeah, just shove it in
the edges.
I'm gonna keep that. I'm keeping that snapper case.
Well, I mean, let's get into it because that's the perfect way to juxtapose what got you into film. We're all about pretty close to the same age. How do you think your film tastes have changed from around 95-ish to what is going on in 2022, and how is that affecting what you're collecting?
Oh man, well I'll say this right off the bat that I give a lot of credit to Andrew for helping me broaden my tastes.
Nice.
Our friendship helped. It definitely helped get my vision clear to the boutique label area. Like I had things, but I didn't really know what I had. Like I had Criterions in my already, relatively small Blu-ray collection, and things like, it was stuff that I was aware of, like Stanley Kubrick's The Killing and stuff like that. Like I was like directors that I was aware of. So
right.
I had that stuff, and then as me and Andrew spent more and more time, doing, videos together and just watching more films for various videos, it just, it got me to a point. And I think what it was is that I had so much of the mainstream stuff that I was like, I don't want to collect this anymore. Like,
Right.
I'm ready to collect more things that I've never heard of. I want to learn more things that I've never seen. So now we start doing, we get closer up to when we start doing this podcast, and now I'm discovering even more labels like Vinegar Syndrome and Severin, and they're the to me the labels that are really going to open your mind up to just a whole other side of cinema. Since then, I mean, it's just anything's fair play for me. I say this all the time on the podcast that, we don't, you should never, I like to treat my collection like more of a library. It's more of me trying to gather as much of the spectrum as possible. Sometimes there's things in my collection that I don't necessarily think are great, but if they have historical value, I want them in my collection. And that's important to me because I think one day, even if I don't watch it right, even if I buy something today and I don't watch it for 5 years from now, it's going to be important to me then too. There's not a change. So, I give Andrew a lot of credit for helping me realize that, that there was more than just what we were seeing in theaters. And yeah, I mean, it's my tastes are basically just wide open. I'm still learning new things every day. We had Andrew Furtado on the other day talking about Category 3 films, and I'm like, I've heard of it, but I've not really looked into it and learned a whole lot of new things there.
Right.
So it's wide open, guys. So throw stuff at me, people.
Right. Yeah.
Andrew, what about yourself? How's everything changed?
I don't want to go on too much of a diatribe as I tend to do. For me, things have changed massively over the years. I would say within the last 10 years or so, things have changed incredibly much in terms of my taste, in terms of my collecting habits. Even my collecting habits over the last 3 years have changed mightily. But for me, I didn't start collecting DVDs until I actually got to college in about 2006, 7, 8, that area, where I started collecting DVDs, where I started browsing the shelves at FYE stores and Best Buys and all that kind of stuff. And I started collecting then. And it was me just kind of listening to what people were saying, coincidentally, on YouTube about the way they collected. I kind of modeled my collecting habits on them, finding the best editions, the special editions, understanding the difference between full screen and widescreen was something I didn't know. That's basic stuff, things like aspect ratios and whatnot. Understanding, the difference between analog versus digital, stuff like that. And then, of course, HD would come later on with Blu-ray, in the late 2000s, around 2009, where I started transitioning from DVD to Blu-ray. But for my taste specifically, it really changed mightily in about 2011 when I took a film course, which was like introductory to film, like the beginning to some type of time. And it was during that film course where I started to learn about different eras of film history. I started to learn about silent era, and then when talkies took over, I started to learn about 1930s gangster films. I started to learn about film noir. I started to learn about foreign cinema, Italian neorealism, the French New Wave. I started to learn about, the Swedish films of Bergman and stuff like that. And then I also started to learn about British cinema. I didn't realize that Great Britain had its whole history of cinema different than the US. I didn't realize that, that certain directors had immigrated from Europe over here and had created their own styles. I didn't realize any of that until I had kind of opened my mind to foreign cinema and also Japanese cinema, Kurosawa, Ozu, a lot of the other ones. Watching Seven Samurai for the first time is just a mind-boggling experience because it's like this 3-hour journey is just amazing. And they made this in 1954. How can someone do something like this?
Right.
Also learning about a lot of kind of modern independent cinema, the whole like Quentin Tarantino, Kevin Smith, Robert Rodriguez, Steven Soderbergh, that whole era of filmmakers, how, there's so much richness in the history of cinema, and it's all out there for us to find now more than ever because of DVD, because of now Blu-ray and now 4K, that we have access to it now more than we've ever had. So I was like, I got to see everything. I want to see it all. And so over the last 10 years, my change has switched to getting more foreign films, learning more about foreign films. And then over the last 3 years or so, pretty much at the start of the pandemic, has been boutique label heavy. Before then, I had bought things like Criterion I was collecting for years. I started at like the Barnes and Noble sale in like 2011, and then I go there religiously every year. It's a holiday for me. Every year I go there and film and see what they got and whatnot. Buy a bunch of titles, go bankrupt, the usual stuff.
Usual.
And there was one time where Steven and I had like an arms race where it's like who could buy more in a month. But it got to the point where I bought way more than I already owned way more than Steven. So like I would buy 25 titles, Steven would buy like 40 or whatever back years ago.
I think that my best month, and might have been the month we're talking about. I think I spent like, it was definitely over $1,000 in a month in Criterion's. It was in that. It was like 50 titles in a month for that sale.
And it was at the time where Steven and I had first met, and Steven didn't know about all of these great movies that were put out by these boutique labels, specifically Criterion. The whole backlog of stuff. They've got nearly 1,200 titles in their catalog now.
Yep.
It's massive, and they've been releasing movies since the 80s, and he didn't know about that, so he was playing kind of catch up at the time.
Yeah.
And
I'm also addicted to it. So
he also got really addicted to it, and that's another part of collecting. There would be times where you would get kind of I got addicted to hunting for movies, going to the stores, looking through dusty shelves at used movie stores, trying to like find these diamonds in the rough, or find things for cheap, or find things that are out of print. I spent a lot of the 2010s doing that. A lot of Saturday nights after the mainstream stores closed, the used stores would stay open for an extra hour. So we had a chain here called Movie Stop, similar to GameStop, same type of,
very
premise.
original. Very
Yeah,
original.
I think it was the same company, but they closed like all their locations, at least up here, like 5 years ago or so. But I spent many nights there, just looking through stuff, because they had just shelves of stuff, not in any real order. You just have to dig. You just go digging, and you never knew what you could find. And that was at the time where I was still like, finding if it was on DVD or if it was a Blu-ray. I didn't quite care as long as the price was right, or the find was right. And I found some gems, found some real good gems at the time. But unfortunately now, the landscape has changed to the point where I can't really go out and do that type of hunting anymore. But I do miss it, just because it was the thrill of the hunt, as they say. Now my hunting is done online, so I guess I get that thrill someplace else.
That's the thrill of making it more difficult on yourself, waiting for the thing to get super limited and then finally buying it.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I've got. That's the other thrill I get. It's the roller coaster ride, where especially these nice sites now tell you how much are left in stock,
Right.
just so they can amp up your anxiety. I tell you, I
appreciate it.
I have vinegar syndrome up as one of my tabs right now, because I was looking at their looking at the quantity on some of their partner label stuff, and I'm like, at what point do I pull the trigger? Do I wait for it to get under 100 copies, play the real rush there, or do I just pull the trigger now? What do I do? But you find ways to make collecting exciting for you. I think that's kind of the moral of the story, because it is a very exciting thing, especially when you get that edition that you've been looking for, or maybe that you've been hunting. There have been some movies and some editions that I've waited years to buy, literally years, and I finally get it, and it's like it's a hell of a good feeling.
Really is. God, there's like 19 routes I want to take this conversation now after that, because that was such a perfect answer.
I do that. I open up a lot of doorways.
Well, let's step through one of them. The clear one that I think is a really great stepping off point is we don't really talk a lot about how we choose what we buy. So for both of you, obviously none of us can afford to get everything. How do you choose what you're even going to purchase next month, what you're going to purchase right now? What movies are a must-have for your collection?
Well, if you listen to the podcast, you know that I'm a little bit of a box set whore. I'm a box set whore. So a lot of times box sets catch my eye, because I like getting my bang for the buck. I mean, like if there's something that's really interesting, and bringing up Severin again, their box sets have been amazing this year, and everything that they come out with just hits that it tickles that funny bone of what I love, like, to discover. So, box sets a lot of times are things that I go after first, but it's all, as we say, it's the film's the central thing, and I'll do my research on things that look interesting to me, and if I find that it's interesting, I go ahead and not everything gets the pre-order, but and it depends on where I decide I'm going to buy it from. Some, we like to shop at Orbit DVD. They don't do pre-orders yet. They're talking about doing that in the future, but so I have to wait for them to get their stock in. But the thing with Orbit is a lot of times their stock comes in early. So sometimes I'll wait on them, but a lot of times if I'm going ahead and making a decision, I'll, specifically like Indicator. Like I think I go ahead and I pre-order Indicator right away because I'm just such a fan of them, and it's really just where my trust lies the most. I trust Indicator as a label. They don't fail me a lot, so I get most of their releases right off the bat. And I mean, I think you just got to understand what you like. You got to understand what your tastes are, and also be okay with breaking some of your own rules, like with what you think you might like, and what, just be open and do your research. I think you should look into everything. The internet is a wonderful place for that. You can look into it, see who directed the film, see see if it sparks your interest, make a decision with what money you have. I think you have to be responsible. I think, especially if you're people like us that have families, right. You have to be thinking about them while you're making these decisions. And so I'm going for something a lot of times that I think might be super limited, that I think might run out fast. I took that, for instance, like Shaw Brothers last year, I thought was going to be something that went fast. Now it didn't. They made so many of them that it's still in stock.
It's a year later, you can find them for the same exact price that you paid for a year ago.
But that's what I do. I'll make a judgment call on what I think might be something that is an edition I really want that's going to go fast, and I'll probably go ahead and snatch that up on a pre-order, or within a couple weeks, go ahead and buy it. So deciding what to buy can be difficult. There's things that hang around out there, and you just I make lists. I make lists on the side in my phone, like, Same. Remember this, because you're going to want to come back to it. So,
yeah. And sometimes you do end up missing out on something, which is unfortunate. I think many of us have stories about missing out on something, whether it was something that was on sale for a ridiculously low price, or whether it was something where a website screwed up when it came to a technical aspect, to where something dropped to a ridiculously low price and you still missed out on it. And then sometimes things are so limited that you miss out on them, and then you have a good story to tell. My story here on the podcast used to always be, what was it, Stephen? The Gamera Complete Collection, the first release, the big box one. They since released them individually in 2 different box sets. You can get them. It's not the same. Don't lie to me on that.
Lie to yourself.
It's that's the one that always, I always, bemoan that I missed out on. But you can still find things like that, but you got to pay an exorbitant amount to get it. And a ridiculous amount to get it. It all depends on what you have available to you financially and how badly you want something. But I don't like to make rash decisions when it comes to collecting. I'm way more patient than Steven. That used to be, that's kind of our yin yang relationship when it comes to collecting. Steven was a pre-order, instant pre-order guy since I've known him. He's cooled down a lot over the last year or so, but I used to ask him, "Hey, did you hear that did you see that this is coming out?" And he'd be like, "I already pre-ordered it." So it's it's that. For me, I'm way more cautious, patient, hence why I do miss out on some things. And I also wait to see the trends. I know certain sites and certain labels, we we tend to collect from do have sales rather around the same times every year. Indicator has the flash sale twice a year. Criterion has not only the flash sale on their website twice a year, but the 50% Barnes and Noble sale still happens every year, every July and every November. I'm saying that because it could go away at any time.
So
There've been
far,
rumors of
yeah.
it going away. Let's hope it doesn't. But as of right now, it's supposed to still happen relatively soon, actually. So
Just this coming week, I believe.
I believe
Starts Friday, the 4th.
Yeah, so it's happening already. So I wait for that. Black Friday is another time if you want more mainstream stuff. I always tell people Black Friday, if you want anything mainstream, like the mainstream blockbusters that came out this year, the Marvel stuff, superhero stuff, all that stuff's going to be cheap on Black Friday for the most part. So jump on that while you can if you can wait, because that stuff hardly ever goes on sale anymore, the more mainstream things. But for me, collecting always comes down to the movie itself. Is this a movie? One, is it a movie I know? Is it a movie I've seen? Is it a movie I've wanted to have seen? Have I been waiting for this Blu-ray to finally come out? And now I can finally get it. And is it something that I have in my collection already? And if I do, is this a better version of it? If I don't, is this the best version than the previous version? All those things pop in your head when you're a collector.
Right.
And also pricing is a thing as well. How expensive is this? Is this Blu-ray worth $40? Is this release worth $60? Sometimes you gotta really take that into account, because although this is a great release, is this price really worthwhile for one movie? How much do you want to pay for one movie? That's why the box sets, you can kind of maximize your value. And I think that's what the allure of them is. Getting 6 movies for $60 or whatever the price may be is a pretty damn good value. Yep. You're getting all those movies plus the extra features, plus and hopefully a good quality, well-designed, well-packaged collection. Not all of them are created equal from everywhere, but for the most part, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So you got to factor in all those things. It's all about maximizing your value and spending what you can and what you can't, and being patient, I think. And then, but of course, if you have the funds, by all means, go buy whatever the heck you want. By all means, if you can do it, we're only here for a very short time. You might as well go full tilt, go dial it up to 11.
Buy the heck whatever you want is a really good way to transition into something that you guys have discussed previously on your show. And I think may have been the first time that you guys brought up my show on your show, which is when you discussed this ongoing conversation between collectors versus film fans, and how perhaps there's a side of this that people are getting toxic about, and that the whole limited edition allure might be a little toxic for people to fall into that trap. Since it's been a good 6 or 8 months since that conversation, how do you feel we're trending in that regard?
Look, I mean, it's, there's, I feel like there's always, 2 sides to something like this. I think like it's, I think just like what you guys were trying to say, in your response to that video, that you felt like that they were kind of turning collector into a negative thing. And, I don't agree with, I don't know that, Aaron Pym, who was part of that initial conversation, came on, talked with you kind of smooth things out, I think, by the end of it. But I do think that, we're getting so in that conversation gets semanticsy. It's like, do we want to call ourselves, curators? Well, like you said, curators are also librarians, but like, you have a library, you're also a curator of your library. It's like, you're getting like, who wants to call each other what? It's like, it doesn't, let's not get into a name game, but what we all are film fans. And I think, their worry is more about why people are buying these things, and that they're not buying them because of the movies, but they're buying them because they're addicted to collecting. They're just hoarding things.
Yep.
And I can see a side of that where I understand, like in a perfect world, I want people to love cinema and to talk about it and be doing this for the right reasons. But that's not everybody's situation. Not everybody is able to, collecting is something that makes us feel good. And we're taking that, we're doing this because it makes us feel good. And maybe we're suppressing something that's making us feel bad. That could be somebody's situation. Is that healthy all the time? No. But if it's making them happy, what are we to judge that? And so, yeah, can it be negative to impulsively buy a bunch of Blu-rays? Then maybe you don't have really the means to do it. Maybe it's a little negative in that way, but I don't think it's a bad thing that people are trying to feel good about something that they love. And, I don't think it's our place to like judge people's overall motivation of why they do things. If anything, them people are a gift to people like us that want this to keep going, because if they're going to keep buying tons of Blu-rays, whether they watch them or not, they're helping keep this business alive. And so I have to thank them for that. But it's really not our place. It's not my place to understand why he's buying Blu-rays, and I don't think he's watching them. I don't think that's not my place to, I don't care.
I'm kind of with you, Steven. I mean, for me, I take a very liberal stance when it comes to movies and just what movies mean to people, because movies can mean so many different things to so many different people. And I also think that movies can be kind of anything you want them to be. They can be comfort, they can be educational, you can study them to learn from them. They could be on in the background while you do other things. They don't have, they can function in many different ways. And for me, cinema, like I think I've said it a few times, where cinema is kind of always there to kind of pick from at any different era, to where you can just go to it at any time. It doesn't really matter when you get to it, you get to it. So with collecting, I would say is almost the same thing. Collecting just to collect, if you've got the space for it, because I know a lot of us don't, whether someone's watching all of these movies, I don't really care. If you are, good for you. If you're not,
well, the thing is we know we're not. I know I'm buying stuff.
Yeah, I've got stacks of stuff that I've been waiting a long time to watch, just because I haven't gotten around to it. I also have this thing where there are some films that I know that I'm not ready yet to watch. It's some films that I'm not mentally prepared for to watch. That I feel like for myself in my personal, history of knowing movies, like can I be fully able to absorb this type of movie? Like there are certain movies that I haven't seen yet, like just something gigantic, like The Human Condition, is something I haven't watched yet. There's the Criterion Blu-ray out of that I've wanted to buy, and I haven't bought it yet. There are other films in my collection that I haven't watched yet because, I don't feel like I'm quite at that point yet. And then there are other films that, because I've watched films that I'm not ready to watch yet, and I'm like, I don't fully appreciate this yet. Like, for example, the first time I watched Eraserhead, I watched it about 10 years ago. I was just starting to get into like David Lynch and avant-garde and art house cinema. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and the movie, fractured my mind. And then I would come back to it years later, having gone through, this surrealist cinema kind of self-education of watching David Lynch, watching the people who influenced him, and then watching other surreal films. I'm now at a point where I could revisit Eraserhead, which we did for our podcast at one point, and I could be like, and I can better understand it. So it all depends on, like I'm trying to get a long way around saying, it really all depends on the individual and how they want to, treat their cinematic lives. But the collecting aspect of it, I'm also kind of more free mind, thinking of like anyone can kind of collect any way they want to.
Exactly.
Whether it is all mainstream, all boutique, a mix of both, whether they want to still buy DVDs, because DVDs, if you look at the financial economics of it all, is still the highest selling physical format for movies, is still DVDs. And we've moved way past the era where DVDs are a quality format for us to be watching. I know that's a little snooty, but that is the case.
And ultimately, if we're being super choosy about what we're buying, like if everybody was just buying what everybody thought was great cinema, we would
we would have stopped by now.
We'd be gatekeeping ourselves, you know. Like
Exactly.
Gatekeeping is another thing where we're seeing that a lot now, specifically when it comes to deciding about what we want to see from which label or what we expect to see from which label.
God, I'm so sick of hearing about it. Like I'm so sick.
It's like if a label releases a certain type of movie for a longest time, let's say they only release old Hollywood stuff, and then they start releasing things that are different. People are like, "Oh, I wish they would release those types of movies again." And I'm like, they're probably going to, but it doesn't mean that they have to keep releasing those type of movies. Like I think I brought up Indicator in one of our recent episodes where I'm like, people expected Indicator to keep releasing the same type of movies that they were releasing, and then now they're releasing more, deeper cut British cinema that people are not aware of, and it's not going to be for everyone, and it's not going to even be stuff people have heard about, and it may not even be great movies, but they can release it because they have that prerogative and they have the ability to do it. And it doesn't mean that, we shouldn't be like attacking them for that. You know what I mean? Or pushing back against that. Criterion, I know, gets a lot of that pushback with a lot of their selections because everyone views Criterion with a sense of prestige and a sense of honor, where they put out Citizen Kane, they put out The Red Shoes. Why would they put out, some
Princess
of the other
Bride?
Yeah, why would they put out? Yeah, Princess Bride got pushed back, and I'm like, how?
Bull Durham.
That was. I'm pretty sure Princess Bride was already in the collection to begin with. It was a laser disc.
Yeah.
Vinegar Syndrome's getting a lot of that flack this year too, because they're putting out bigger titles, and people are like, "Come on, where's our no-name horror?" And in all reality, putting out one copy of Roadhouse could sell enough for them to be able to put out 10 no-name horrors. So you should be all right with that.
Yeah, it's like they just put out the Amityville Horror, which is not a mainstream horror film, but it's a well-known pop culture horror film. And, that's not the same as them putting out like something like The Mutilator or whatever it may be, some of their more like deeper cut, B or C movie.
It's not
titles.
Extreme Samurai, it's not.
Great movie. Underrated.
Which is amazing. It's one of the most underrated releases, by the way, that you guys should buy more of.
I think it's one of their best releases.
It's amazing.
Their whole thing of kind of spreading out. But the thing is, they kind of spread out the love, though. That's what I kind of love about Vinegar Syndrome is like they've got their main stuff, which is their brand, as you say, and then they've got the partner label stuff, which does all the goods. Nice. Then they've got their partner labels, which put out a diverse group of things. Then they've got like their VSAs and their VSU, and now their VS, and then now their Vinegar Syndrome production.
It's the whole alphabet.
Put out like anything you can want from like dirty adult films from the 70s to like horror films from now. Right. They put out like everything.
Yeah. It's
and there's enough of this diversity to go around, I think, for everyone to be satisfied. And if you don't like what one company's put out one month, chances are that they may put out something you like the next month, because this stuff moves. Just being in it, it's like, I can't believe, we're talking about this same company again. I felt we just talked about them. This stuff moves so fast.
Well, and the pandemic alone has shown us how many things can be delayed and delayed and delayed. And there's so many titles that should have been released sometimes literally a couple of years ago, and just because of elements or rights issues or something else getting,
Martin got pushed for so many times. I mean, just trying to get
the Hitcher. We talked about the Hitcher early on in our show, and we're still waiting for that. I don't think we're going to get it until
it's going to be early next year, I think, maybe. Hopefully, I'm hoping. But I mean, it's and to put it, to get back to that initial conversation, ultimately, I think, like I said, like we don't need to judge other people's collecting habits. I think people as that term influencer, it's our job to do what to say our piece, and if we can influence people to maybe be more open-minded and maybe like our point of view, then that's great. But if they don't, that's okay. That's the part of, if you're not having open conversations about your habits and your collecting and all that stuff, then you're not somebody that really needs to be part of a community. That's what a community is.
I think that just, not to get too broad of a subject, but it's kind of like the internet culture of itself. If you don't like something that you see or that someone says, you can kind of move on. Like life is so fluid where things are constantly moving forward, where like just go. You know what I mean? Like if you say like, oh, I don't like Vinegar Syndrome because they put out bad movies. Okay. But move on
Sure,
to the next
okay.
one.
Doesn't change anything.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, what do I do with that information? It's like, all right.
I mean, you can
Thank
try
you for
to you
telling
can
me.
try
What
to
do I?
convince them. You can try to have a conversation and influence them otherwise, but most of the time on the internet, that's kind of hard to
Yeah,
do.
it's like why would I waste my time trying to change this person's mind? Because
True.
chances are you're not going to. Whether it's politics, whether it's certain cultural things, whether it's certain, humanistic type rights things. If people are entrenched with their opinion, chances are it's been in there for a long time. Changing someone's mind about a lot of things is really difficult. And sometimes it's just not worth the energy because you got to focus on more positive things and probably focus on things that are more important to you as a person. Even with
agree.
movies, like I would rather just move on. Like if someone tells me that they don't like a certain movie, good for you. Let me go watch. I want to watch something else. I got too many movies to watch, too many movies to buy, too many movies to collect to get
This
into
is why we
fights
don't
with people.
This is why we don't pay attention to a community as much. We
I
don't
don't.
talk
Yeah,
about
I don't got
I'm
time
just
for
kidding.
this.
This is too much work.
I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a short time, and it's got to be about movies.
And I'm here for a good time. So to make it good, I'm going to do what I want. That's kind of the basis of the whole thing.
This is my party, and I'll do what I want. I'm sorry, that's not
Yeah,
the song.
especially
but-
something as personal as what you're
and I'll cry if I want to.
Yeah. Is that the
Yeah.
Is that the song?
Either
Yeah,
way,
that's-
it works.
I remember that from Problem Child. Talk about an early. Going back to what you're saying about an early film that I watched a lot.
Yeah.
Those Problem Child
Problem
movies.
Child.
Same.
Yeah.
We are very much of the same era. All right, let's go one more big question. Something that both of our shows share a lot, other than the announcements, are these interviews. And both of our groups are kind of making these interviews really special for a lot of people. What have been some of the more standout interviews for your guys, and what is something that really happened in one of these interviews that made you go, damn, this is turning into a real thing?
Andrew, you want to
You
start?
want to go with me first? For me, I'll start general and then go more micro. Generally, getting to talk to people that I've never thought I would ever get to talk to on about such a personal thing as movies or movie collecting has been incredibly satisfying for me. Like I've never in a million years thought I would talk to Eddie Muller. Eddie Muller from TCM was probably my biggest interview, biggest highlight, I think, for our show so far, just because, TCM, I first got into TCM, several years ago. I was much later to that area than a lot of other people. And then once I got to that area, I fully dove into classic cinema. I love classic cinema, old Hollywood movies from 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all that kind of stuff. I'm a history buff, so I love all that stuff.
Right.
And getting to talk to someone who's so close to that stuff, being the czar of noir, loving noir so much, and going from seeing him doing his hosting duties on TCM to getting to talk to him in person about movies is just something that I never thought I'd be able to do a few years ago. Never thought I'd be able to do it.
Yeah,
Steven.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's like it's one of the things where you don't want to like point out necessarily, because I think for the most part, almost every interview we've done has been very rewarding in some way.
Same.
And and they all bring different things. Some you get into real deep conversations about just your favorite movies. And then sometimes it's we get it becomes more technical. We're talking about the industry a little bit more. One of my favorite ones that always comes back to me is actually one of our early ones, and that's with collaborator Justin Beam. And he had a lot of good stories about him working with Dick Miller when he passed, and then him doing a commentary with Roger Corman, working on that commentary, and just that was a great one. Justin Beam's just he was just such a great guest.
Yeah, he geeked out about Halloween because he had worked on a lot of Halloween releases, and Halloween's like a favorite horror franchise of mine. He was great. Him talking about going through like just dropping in conversation, going through a McDonald's drive-through with Roger Corman. How real? Like, is that real?
Will you buy me some fries?
or like,
please,
yeah, or just talking about what he was talking about Vincent Price and how he was talking about Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
And just like the casualness of that, as if like, yeah, all of us get to talk to Alice Cooper. It's just,
I mean, I think he
it,
knows that it's awesome, but it's just like it's when you hear people talk, any of these guys that we either get an interview or they talk about people they know, it's just like we're so like we're so
yeah,
close, like
how many
we're so
steps
close.
are we away from that person?
Right.
Yeah,
We've been very fortunate that I think all of our guests have been great.
yeah.
We've never had a guest that's been
Same.
difficult. We've never had a guest that didn't bring something, to the table that was fun and exciting, that added to our show, added something informative, or that we've gotten to, give to our audience something else other than ourselves. You know what I mean? I think everybody's been able to, bring something to our show that we could then, pass on to our audience. Yeah, and a lot of that, I would say, a lot of that is Steven. Steven is the one who does all the communication with people. I don't like to talk to people in general, so Steven's the one who does all the talking. He's the face of the organization, essentially.
It's I knew
He takes some swings. He takes some swings.
It's and Ryan knows this. He does the same thing. It's just about you just got to try. Like you just reaching out to people. It's that simple. You get lucky. Sometimes you don't, and you just got to be motivated. You just got to try every avenue you can. Keep your ears to the ground. Look, keep an eye. Twitter's just it's an amazing thing about Twitter is you can connect with people pretty easily through there if they're willing. Some people, block out their own DMs and stuff like that, but you could make friends in different ways, and you just got to be motivated, and you got to look at one of our main things about having guests is to make sure that we're highlighting the people behind these releases that we love so much, and that's just I think that's the biggest pleasure about doing it is having a Kat Ellinger. Making sure that name gets put out there. That tons of people know that name, but we want to help reinforce it as much as we can. And that's the greatest thing we can do is just hopefully the small amount of people that listen to us can help spread somebody's name, spread somebody's work just a little bit more, and hope that it will help people buy it.
Really, it makes if anything, I think I've said this many times on our show, it makes the releases or these movies or these Blu-rays, these things that you put your money on, it makes them more more valuable if you know who's behind it. You know what I mean? Like you want to support those people, like whether it is someone who does the layout design, whether it's somebody who does the cover art for some of these releases, whether it's somebody who worked on the extras. It's like you put a face to all these kind of faceless things, and you're like, damn, these are like, and not only that, they're regular people working a job.
Right.
They're not part of some corporate machine that's that is quote unquote Hollywood or anything like that. They're just working from like one job to the other. They're freelance for the most part for many of them. You do get some people who do work, within a Severin, within a Vinegar Syndrome. They're there, but a lot of these people are freelance and just kind of picking up jobs wherever they can, using their craft. And then you get to see like their effort that go into it. And you get to also see that they're kind of like us. They're film fans. That's where it all starts. Yeah. It all starts for the love of movies.
I look at it as when we do these interviews, we're doing the special featers for the special features.
Exactly.
Kind of. Yeah.
So I think Kat Ellinger one time said that she has 25 part-time jobs, and people don't realize how much that is true for a lot of these. I mean, Kat literally just recently directed a full-blown documentary. She wrote it, she edited it, she is doing special features, she's doing visual essays, she's doing commentaries, she just started another podcast. That type of person deserves all the credit, and they don't usually get that sort of spotlight. So your guys' group and my group, I mean, the amount of time and effort that we're putting into it is worth it, because a lot of these people are genuinely special. And I don't know if it's true for you all, but for me, a lot of the stuff that has made it special for me is the off-air conversations. We'll get done with the recording. like Brad Henderson from Vinegar Syndrome. He, first of all, everybody knows he is a talker, but he
knows he's a talker. Yeah.
He did my Thursday show and we talked for about 3.5 hours and we're like, all right, that's done. Have a good night. Thanks for talking. And we just sat there for another full-on hour just discussing things. And it was just a beautiful time to learn more about somebody that you like and respect their output and get to know them as a person. And it's special. And it brings this era of humanity to these releases that you don't get anywhere else, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing too that boutique labels just really do a lot is it gives it's caused us to focus on that stuff more. And now, because when you talk about mainstream releases, we're not looking like who did the commentary on this, unless it's something really special. But like these boutique labels have made it a thing that they make sure they list everybody that's been involved in making this release. And you're like, okay, so I know your name now, and now I can go find you maybe on social media, and we can have a conversation. That's something that most mainstream releases are not. They don't care about. They're not putting booklets in their releases and
then you
telling
can see what those other people have. You can see what those people have worked on, and you can go back and be like, "Oh yeah, I have this in my collection," or "Oh, I've been wanting to get that." Now it maybe puts more emphasis on you wanting to get a certain release. For me, I'm always someone who's incredibly indecisive about buying things. So any little decision that can sway me, I take into account. Like I will go to like our friend Scott Saslow, who does a lot of the layouts and a lot of the artwork and stuff like that. I'll go to his site and look at what he's put out and be like, hey, what do I want to buy myself for Christmas? What do I want to buy myself for a birthday? Maybe this will help me decide what I want to buy. Or it's something like Sister Hyde, who just won an award for her poster for Bodies, 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 the movie that just came out from A24. And it's just like, you meet all these people and you realize they're a lot closer to the things you love than you realize. They just don't get the spotlight that they should probably get.
Well, I think that's a good transition then. Speaking of things that don't get enough spotlight, let's talk about an upcoming collaboration between Steven from Chasing Labels and myself. And let's talk about what we have on our docket. Steven, you want to do an introduction?
Oh, sure, man. I guess. Once again, I got to introduce something. Hopefully, I get everybody's name right. No, that's good. So here we go. So me and this was a few months back ago. I had the thought in my mind that, and it's something that I kind of done with my YouTube channel. We'd done our own Academy Awards for mainstream things, and so I was like, look, we need to do this for discs. Blu-rays need their own award show, and we need to be on a level that I think everybody will really appreciate it. And so one of the first names that came into my mind was Ryan, because I knew Ryan was a motivated guy, hardworking guy. And, he's in the YouTube space. I'm not really in the YouTube space anymore. So he's going to be the guy that can help this come together. And so I reached out to him. Funny enough, at the same time, he was like, I was just talking about doing this with somebody else.
Yep.
And, then from there it just bloomed. It's bloomed into a wonderful working and slowly becoming a great friendship, I think. And it's always daunting to work with somebody, especially when you're not able to work with them in person. Work with them and wonder if you're going to mesh well. And I think I speaking for myself, I think so far it's been going pretty well.
I would say so. I mean, we both have our ups and downs, and we're doing pretty well with the whole thing. And I am beyond excited to see how the community reacts to this. So let's get into some details. The first thing, we needed to come up with a decent name. So we are calling our upcoming award show the Shelf Shock Rewind 2022, the Disc Awards. And the big date that we're all looking forward to is this is not going to be an award show until February, because there's still a lot of discs that come out in December and November. A lot of the November Vinegar Syndrome stuff people won't have until perhaps the end of December if you're not a subscriber. So we're going to be able to vote on some of these releases all the way through the middle of January so that we can do this the right way. What else would you like to share with the community on this?
Well, at this point right now, I guess we could share that a voting date would be December 15th. I think we're working towards that date. We want to give you as much time as you can to get from starting the voting, which will last about a month, going into the next year. So we will keep voting going into next year. And at this point right now, what we've decided to do when it comes to deciding about nominations is that we decided to form kind of a committee that we're calling the Creators Selection Committee. And this committee is made up of tons of contributors, producers, and, other, content creators around the industry of boutique labels, whether it be podcasters or YouTubers. And so right now we have I think a good, 50 or so members in our first year so far. And we think that will be a good start, I think, for helping come up with great submissions for nominees and narrow it down so that we can vote on it. And along with voting, we will also give everybody an option to write in their favorites. So anything else more to that you think we should talk about?
Each of our categories, which are numerous, we are believe settling around 25 are going to be the number of categories. And each of our categories is going to have a winner for the creator's choice and a winner for the community. So you can see the difference in the people that put their time and energy into making these things for us or talking about them or being a creator in some form. They're going to have a winner. And also the community at large will have a winner. And we'll see how many of those mesh. We'll see how many of those are different. And for me, I'm looking forward to just the data behind that because I'm that type of a person. I get nerdy about it. I can't wait to see how everybody responds to this. It is an incredible, incredible feeling just to look back on the amount of stuff that has been released this year, to know that this is genuinely going to be a daunting choice for a lot of these categories. And some of these categories, because you should be prepared for some of the things that you might be talking about. We've got things like Best Classic Film Release, which is for a film that was released before 1940. Best Home Video Presentation overall. We got Best Extras Packages like Visual Essay, Best Commentary, Best Interview. We got Best Horror Release, Best Box Set, all culminating into Best Overall Release, which is going to be our version of the Best Picture. And that night is going to be exciting because we're going to be doing a live show. We're going to be presenting some of these things to the community with you all being involved in the comments at the exact same time. We might have guests on to come and share some of the nominees and some of the votes and what has won. Perhaps if they volunteer, we might get some of the people that have won to be able to make an appearance that night and talk about that release. There's a lot of stuff we're working on, and it's going to be so interesting behind the scenes to watch it all come together. And I can't wait to see how everybody responds.
Yeah, I think that's the most exciting thing is that we're getting really, the further along we do this, the more closer we get to voting and and sharing it with more people. We're getting really excited to share it with everybody else. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the first year of anything is going to be always growing pains. There's going to be things that you maybe made decisions on that you don't like.
Right.
And there might be things that get nominated that you don't like, or things that didn't get nominated that, you're upset about. That happens with any award show. But we hope that ultimately the big thing that we're trying to, and I think any award show really strives to do, is to have a perspective on getting able to show as many different releases as possible, show off as many different releases as possible. And that's why we have a committee. That's why we have a committee with all different likes and dislikes. And they're all these committee members are all coming from different backgrounds and different tastes. And we're going to have a lot of different nominees for you to choose from. And then, like I said, you write in for what you like if you don't like our selections.
No matter what.
But we have to have a starting point. So the nominees will be there. It's like you said, daunting, but the challenge is really fun. It's a really fun thing to try to do something like this with a whole bunch of people. And when you get a whole bunch of people to do one thing, it can be beautiful. This could end up being a really fun thing that we do every year for a while,
But it's important to participate in that first one. So make sure you spread the word, get everybody involved as you can. We're going to be reminding people throughout the entire process when it's time to vote, when the vote is coming due, what you can do to help. And we'll have copy that you can share. We'll have promo pictures, everything that we can just to get the word out, because without that, it's gonna just be a bust. And I think that this is something that if it goes well enough and reaches enough circles, this could be something that we look forward to every single year.
And it could get better. It would get better at, with who's going to be presenting. We could get more people involved presenting. We get more of the labels maybe involved in wanting to even maybe accept the awards and acknowledge them if they like it enough, So that's things to think about. And so ultimately, I just can't wait to just share it with you guys. And I hope you guys like what we do with it. And if you don't like it, you can tell us, and we won't cry on screen, but we might cry off screen, just so you know.
So as we said, Shelf Shock Rewind 2022. Keep in mind, this will be February 19th, and we are going to be doing voting from December 15th through January 15th. More to come on that front, but it's an exciting thing to look forward to. And I think that's our show. Andrew, Steven, thank you so much for coming and hanging out. Chasing Labels, all of the links will be in the description below. Is there anywhere else you guys would like to pitch out there as either anything for the podcast or for you guys personally?
So, all the normal places. We got a Facebook group, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. And we're also just to highlight it, usually at the end of the year, me and Andrew take a couple week break, for the holiday season. We'll probably be out for the end of the last 2 weeks of the year. But then when we come back for the new year, we will be having Jesse from Diabolic DVD to join us. And we're going to be doing our favorite releases of 2022. So You might get a little bit of a sneak peek of what I might be voting on in our first year of Shelf Shock Rewind. I don't know. You'll see.
Way to jump the gun on that one.
What am I going to do? We got to do our best, our favorites.
That's
of the
true.
Year, so.
That's true. I mean, 2022 is such an interesting year, chock full of releases, to the point where I really need to take a hard look and inventory about what has actually come out this year. Because 2021 and 2022 for me keep mashing together in terms of when things have come out, because it feels like there's so much great stuff we've gotten over the last 2 years.
Very, very true. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. As I said, I've respected you guys for a long time. It's been a big honor to have you here. And I just hope more people pay attention, because it's all about the love and the community for stuff like this.
Exactly. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having us.
Well, as usual, I would say from one collector, but from 3 collectors to all of you. Have a good night.